Hi, I thought I would start a basic online series for how to adapt certain yoga practices to work with different mental health conditions. And whether you're a yoga teacher or a yoga therapist that has a vested interest in working with mental health conditions, or you teach general classes, the reality is that given that 20% of the UK population suffers from depression or anxiety at any given time, that the need to adapt yoga practices for these groups is really important. So let's start with the most ubiquitous of all practices in yoga, breath, right? An Ujjayi breath is one of the few pranayama that is often practiced throughout asana and is also formally practiced on its own. So let's start with this. Why not start with something that we use all the time? Now, classically within the yogic tradition, one of the ways that we work with breathing is that we pull in the solar plexus so that we can activate Uddiyana Bandha. As we do this, the idea is we lock in the energy and we also help the energy to move up through Sushumna, right, the main nadi, to move up into our consciousness to give us the power to see through our habitual habits so that we can transform ourselves. And not only does this have a basis in classical literature and yoga, but neuropsychologically, there is also an underpinnings behind this that is real. And maybe we'll talk about that another day. However, if you are stressed out, if you are anxious, you tend to breathe into the chest most of the time. And if as a yoga teacher or yoga therapist, you then suggest that the person continue in this fashion, and they are not at the place where they're transforming their whole consciousness, you're actually feeding the habit pattern of anxiety and upset mood. So why is that, and what can we do to adjust it? The body is amazing, the breath is amazing, and I'm constantly awed by it. So your lungs have all kinds of sensory receptors throughout them. They send oodles of information to your brain, and this makes sense because if you stop breathing, you can't survive. So it's really important to know what's going on there. And at the base of your lungs, there are sensory receptors that actually tell your brain when they're active in a slow, controlled fashion that we're safe. Alternatively, the sensors higher up, right, which tend to be more peppered or laced with something we call rapidly adapting stretch fibers, tell the brain that we need to mobilize our energy. Either we're exercising or we're under threat. So when we breathe in this way, like this, we really wake ourselves up. And if we're already anxious, we promote and enhance that energy. Alternatively, if we actively bring the breath down, we inform our brain that we feel relaxed and we're safe. And even if we're not feeling relaxed, we start to induce that shift. Likewise, the base of the lungs here is more permeable to oxygen. The top of the lungs, with the exception of where we're engaged in rigorous exercise, is less permeable to oxygen. So if we want to really effectively oxygenate the blood in the body, something that helps our cells to work better, we want to breathe down lower, right? Breathing up higher, once again, has a real benefit, but it is further along the yogic path, a place that people with mental health conditions have not yet walked upon, right? They're in earlier stages. So what can we do? Well, you can guide somebody to place a hand over their chest or heart center if you like, and another one at the base of the lungs. Try not to use the cue of belly, because then people pull and push the belly in and out, and that also does not send a message of safety and ease. So just placing the hand at the solar plexus, tell the person to notice where the breath is naturally entering the lungs. And then very gently guide them to easily, subtly breathe into the lower lungs. Just like that, and they can integrate that Ujjayi breathing. And that Ujjayi breathing really helps to have better control over the flow of where the breath goes. And then you can use this theme throughout the practice to teach them to bring the breath down in every posture. For example, in a spinal twist, And spinal twists are really nice to do this in because naturally, due to the anatomical contraction of the lungs in the pose, the breath travels up. And if you actively bring it down, you are retraining the entire system to start to have this method of breathing as the default. The same when you lift your arms overhead. The breath tends to come up and the heartbeat goes faster to get blood up to the hands. But if at this time, once again, you actively bring the breath down, you are retraining the entire mechanism. So, think about this in your classes, right? For your more advanced students, of course, they can use Uddiyana Bandha, expanding the whole rib cage and letting that Shakti move up into the skull and expand the consciousness. But for other people, first, just teach them to breathe in a way that is going to give rise to calm and ease. So that's the tip for this week. Tune in next time for more information about how to breathe to improve your mental health. Namaste.